Have you ever wondered what the and a are in German? I don't know about you, but that was my first question when I learned German. Today you'll learn about the definite and indefinite articles in German, or the and a. Are you wondering how to say the or a in German? You may have heard of der, die, or das, but how do you choose the right one? And how many ways are there to say these simple words? The German definite and indefinite articles may seem complicated at first glance, but they're easier to learn than you think. What are definite and indefinite articles? Throughout your German language learning journey, you'll likely come across many complicated sounding grammar terms. Luckily, you don't have to memorize all these names to learn basic German. So the definite article is a fancy way of saying the. The German equivalent forms are der, die, and das. For example, the car drove over the bridge. Indefinite articles are a fancy way of saying a or an in English. For example, a car drove over a bridge. Now that you understand what definite and indefinite articles are, you're probably wondering how to say the and a in German. But to choose the right form, you'll need to know the gender and the case. Let's look at these two terms in detail and find out what that means exactly. Part 1. German articles and noun gender. In German, words have one of three genders that include the masculine, feminine, and neuter. For example, word gender, der, die, or das. The masculine example, like der Mann, the man, or der Vater, the father. The feminine example, die Frau, the woman, die Mutter, the mother. A neuter example is das Kind, the child, or das Baby, the baby. You can see in German, the is represented by different words, not just one like in English. Masculine is der, feminine is die, and neuter is das. All male nouns use the masculine form, female nouns use the feminine form, and neuter nouns use the neuter form. You can learn the genders of many German words by remembering which suffixes or endings indicate which gender. You can see here a list of German suffixes and the genders they tend to signal. There are different endings for masculine, feminine, and neuter nouns. There are exceptions, but these are like 80% of the time the correct endings. I have another video where you can learn shortcuts and tips for learning German word gender. You can check that out later. Now let's move on to part 2. Part 2. German articles and the case system. After determining which gender a noun has, you'll need to know the case. German uses a case system to determine which ending to add to an article. The word's case depends on its role in a sentence as either a subject, direct object, indirect object, or possessive object. A subject takes the nominative case, the direct object takes the accusative case and answers the question who or what. The indirect object takes the dative case and answers the question to whom. The possessive object is in the genitive case. Let's review which parts of a sentence are the subject, direct object, and indirect object first. Let's look at example 1. The woman gives the man a radio. The woman is the subject. Gives is the verb. The man is an indirect object to whom she's giving a radio, which is the direct object. It answers what? What is she giving him? In example 2, the man gives the woman a ring. The man is the subject. Gives is the verb. The woman is the indirect object to whom he gives what? A ring. In example 3, the child gives a woman an apple. The child is the subject. Gives is the verb. A woman is an indirect object to whom he gives what? An apple. Here you can see that the noun is performing the initial action. It's the subject. You'll most likely have difficulty identifying the direct and indirect objects. One way to remember which is the direct object and indirect object is that direct objects answer the question who or what. Indirect objects answer the question to whom. A sentence can stand alone with a subject and direct object, but a subject and indirect object alone make an incomplete sentence. German definite and indefinite articles. Gender and case. Now you know that German words have genders, and that you can use cases according to a noun's function in a sentence. Next, let's see how to say the and a in German with these two factors in mind. Let's look at the masculine. The nominative is der or ein, accusative den or einen, dative dem or einem, possessive des or eines. The feminine nominative die or eine, accusative is die or eine, the dative is der or einer, and possessive is der or einer. The neuter nominative is das or ein, accusative is das or ein, dative dem, einem, and possessive des or eines. The following characteristics can help you understand the patterns of each gender. For now, let's focus on the nominative, accusative, and dative cases. I'll cover the possessive case in a later post. Masculine case articles start with de in the definite form and end with r, n, or m. Feminine case articles start with de or di in the definite form and end in e or r. Neuter articles start with de or da and end in m or s. Each case also has characteristics that can help you become more familiar with the patterns. The indefinite nominative case articles are the same for the masculine and neuter forms. The accusative and nominative forms are the same for the feminine and neuter articles. The dative forms for the masculine and neuter articles are the same. The dative and possessive forms of the feminine articles are also the same. When you first start to learn German, you'll need to use a table as reference until you remember the different forms. Remembering the last letter for the articles in each case can help make the process go faster. German definite and indefinite articles in action. By now, you understand the mechanics of using German articles, but how do we put all this knowledge into practice? It's time to look at a few examples of German definite and indefinite articles in sentences using the simple phrases we started with above. Let's look at example 1. Die Frau, the woman, is the feminine subject in the nominative case. Gibt, the verb gives. Dem Mann, the man, which is the masculine indirect object. Taking the dative case, ein Radio, a radio. The neuter direct object in the accusative is the thing she gives him. Die Frau gibt dem Mann ein Radio. The woman gives the man a radio. Let's look at another example. Number 2. Der Mann gibt der Frau einen Ring. Der Mann is in the nominative case because it's the masculine subject. Gibt is our verb. Der Frau, which is usually die Frau in the nominative, is in the dative in this case because it's the indirect object. It's receiving a direct object, which in this case is a ring. It's a masculine noun in the accusative case, so we use einen. You'll need to reference some tables before this all becomes familiar. But as long as you have the gist of the idea the first time, you can build upon that knowledge later. Let's look at example 3. Das Kind, the child, is in the nominative case. It's a neuter subject. Gibt is our verb gives. Eine Frau, a woman, here in the dative case, is an indirect object, but this time with an indefinite article. Before we had a definite article, der. Here we use eine, it's indefinite. And the child gives her einen Apfel, an apple, the masculine direct object in the accusative case. As you can see in the examples, you'll need to combine the concepts of gender and case to determine the correct form of the or a in German. This process is known as declension. For native English speakers, the idea can take some getting used to. In the beginning, it's not uncommon to find yourself struggling with tables to construct simple sentences. But don't worry. The German article rules don't have any exceptions, so they'll always apply once you learn. We all know that practice makes perfect, and an excellent way to learn German definite and indefinite articles is to practice by using them. There are some exercises I put together on the website to help you learn which form of the definite and indefinite articles to use. You don't have to know the genders of the words to start practicing, since I marked them on the worksheet. Use the German noun gender and case reference table that you can also download to help you complete the sentences. Just go over to the website, mygermanizedlife.com, and you can fill in the missing definite articles and indefinite articles, and then check your answers afterwards. I hope you had fun learning this German lesson, and see you next time.